Assalamu alaikum! Thank you guys so much for joining us again. Today, we're going to be making something that I think you might be used to having a little bit more often during the winter season. So this is something that's going to, bi-idhnillah, keep you nice and warm when things outside are not so much. So we're going to be making today a desi quinoa soup. So usually, when people think about a soup, they think about a soup that might have a lot of different vegetables. So today, we're going to try our best to incorporate as many vegetables as possible, but we're also going to try to pick things that will allow for our soup to be a little bit more balanced. So let's talk about what balance means and kind of refer back to what we talked about earlier on about how, inshallah, we can all develop a really healthy eating pattern that will allow for us to hopefully ward off disease and inshallah help to manage for those of us who happen to be living with chronic disease. Healthier eating involves you having a really nice balance of vegetables and fruits along with a source of protein that could typically be something that's really low in fat and lean, things like fish, which might be a source of healthy fats, things like chicken breast, things like chickpeas, lentils, and beans. Those are all going to be really good sources of protein, along with things like Greek yogurt and milk. And then we have our final thing, which is going to be whole grains. So try to look through the ingredients we're using today and determine where you think each thing fits into. Is it a vegetable or fruit? Is it a protein? Or is it a grain? And then inshallah, towards the end, we'll be able to go through why each one is so important. So let's get started and look at our ingredients for today. The first thing we're going to be using is just a little bit of canola oil. I'm going to be using about a tablespoon today. And the reason I'm using canola oil instead of other types of things like maybe coconut oil or butter is because canola oil has some really good sources of omega-3 fatty acids. And that's what we're really looking for whenever we're trying to ensure that hopefully, bi-idhnillah, we can lower our risk of developing heart disease, high cholesterol levels, and chronic disease in general. So I'm only going to be using about a tablespoon today. And if you want to use olive oil as well, you can. Olive oil is also a really good source of healthy fats, like omega-3 fats. You'll just have to set your Instant Pot at a lower temperature because generally speaking, olive oil has a different smoke point than canola oil. Canola oil can handle a lot of heat, whereas olive oil can't. Let's move on to our next ingredient. Today we have some onion, and I use onion in practically every recipe that I happen to be working with because I find that the aroma and the flavor that comes from onion is really unmatched. So I'm working with one medium onion today. And if you want to work with other colors of onion as well, like a red onion or purple onion, you can do that. It's just going to give your soup a really nice and different color. I tried to make sure that it was diced and cut really finely so that inshallah it can really integrate very well with our recipe. The next thing I'm going to be using is a variety of spices, and this is where you can pretty much use whatever array of spices that you like. So today I'm going to be using a little bit of garam masala, about a teaspoon of that. I'm also going to be using a teaspoon of cumin and about half a teaspoon of turmeric. I also put in here just a tiny bit of salt, maybe about a teaspoon of salt for the entire amount of soup. And that's because salt, of course, enhances the flavor of whatever you're working with, but it also does a really good job of almost acting like a little bit of a preservative. So I love working with salt for that reason, but I keep the amounts really low because I don't want to really want to make sure that you guys are not having a higher risk of developing high blood pressure, which isn't going to be too good for us in the long run. So keeping your sodium levels low, especially in recipes like a soup, is going to be very important. You, of course, can use whatever types of spices that you like. If you're a big fan of coriander powder, throw that in there. And if you're not a big fan of spice at all, that's totally fine. Use about a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of black pepper instead. I'm going to be working with some garlic paste as well today. And the reason for that is because typically speaking, when you're making a soup, chances are that you know it's going to have to sit on the stovetop for a while, and the last thing you want to do is to try to really elongate the cooking process. So what I'm using is something that kind of cuts that in half, and that would be using just garlic paste. So I'm going to be using about, I would say, 2 tablespoons of garlic paste today, just so that the entire huge amount of our soup has a nice garlicky flavor. But you can always decrease that amount if you want as well. I've even seen people make their soup without it, and that's totally fine too. If you're not going to be using garlic paste and you're just going to be using actual more like normal amounts of garlic with the real garlic, you can always just chop up about 2 or 3 pieces of garlic, and that should allow for you to get the same flavor, which is really good. Let's move on to our vegetables. Now, this is where you can really use any variety of vegetables that you like, and everybody, of course, is going to have their own favorites. So if you're going to be cooking with younger children as well, I encourage you guys to go to the grocery store and see what really appeals to you, because I'm sure that there are going to be colors and flavors that your family likes that maybe I'm not really used to having. So I'm going to be using about 2 stalks of celery today, and I really love celery because of the flavor that it gives. It's not just, you know, a really good vegetable that gives you lots of fiber, helps to manage your blood sugar levels, and helps to keep you regular when it comes to constipation, but it also has a really nice flavor too. So try to think about those things when you're making your soup. You can also try to select things based on their color as well. So typically speaking, really bright vegetables like a bell pepper that I have here, I have a red bell pepper chopped up and I have a yellow bell pepper chopped up. These bright vegetables are a really good source of vitamin C. And vitamin C is one of those vitamins that really helps, of course, with allowing your immune system to function the way that it should, but it also really helps with our body's ability to kind of fight free radicals and things that can help to, inshallah, keep cancer at bay. So I always try to tell people you should be having vegetables with every single meal, and that can be hard sometimes, so putting a bunch into your soup can be a really good way of doing that. I'm also using carrots. And carrots are a bit of a not so common thing that people like to put in their soup. People, at least from where I come from, love to work with potatoes. But if you wanted to look for something a little bit different instead, I advise you to use carrots. Carrots, of course, are a really good source of beta carotene, and they're also one of those vegetables that when you allow to cook for a long time, the texture changes completely. Of course, carrots are really tough, are really rough, but over time they develop this really nice silky and soft texture, which I think is really good, especially when you're working with a soup that's supposed to cook for a long time. I'm also working with some vegetable stock today. So of course, if you don't have vegetable stock, that's totally fine. I'm probably going to be using this only for the added flavor that it gives. If you're not a fan of that, you can always work with just water. Again, we have so many spices and flavors here from our vegetables that you don't really need to be using vegetable stock. I'm just doing this more as an extra added flavor. I'm using about 3 cups today, and I've made sure to use a no salt added vegetable stock because I really want to make sure, again, that we're keeping our sodium intake very low for this recipe without, of course, trying to sacrifice the flavor. That's why I have so many flavorful things inside this recipe today. I'm using 3 cups of the vegetable stock. Now, I'm sure you guys were trying to think a little bit about what I said earlier, about thinking about where everything fits in. So far, I've gone through a lot of different vegetables. I've gone through some flavors, and I've also gone through a really good source of fluid, of water that your body needs to function properly. But I didn't talk about protein yet. And I have something here that kind of acts like a protein and kind of acts like a whole grain as well. I have some quinoa here with me today, about a cup of quinoa. And the reason I'm working with quinoa is because, just like I said, it's a good source of protein. It helps your muscles to be able to replenish and grow. It also really allows for your body to get all of the protein that it might need and the fiber that it needs as well. So if you're trying to ensure that you have good blood glucose control, for those of you that are living with diabetes or pre-diabetes, or even if you have a high risk of developing diabetes, ensuring that you have a lot of fiber in your diet can really help to mitigate that risk. So I'm working with some quinoa today, and you guys are going to notice that it's going to completely change in the way that it looks. Quinoa right now is, of course, just really small beads, and it has a really hard texture, and that's because quinoa is actually a seed. It's not typically a grain, but whenever you put it inside liquid, it's very similar to couscous. It bulges up and it changes texture completely. So we're going to see that today when we make our soup. And the good thing about being able to cook quinoa in a liquid is that it cooks through thoroughly and it absorbs all of the flavor that you're adding to it. So it's a good thing. We have lots of things with flavor today. The next few things that I find really help with a soup is having enough tomatoes. So whenever I work with a soup, just traditionally I'm used to having soups that have a really strong tomato flavor. So I'm using about a can or 800 milliliters of crushed tomatoes today. If you're wondering how many tomatoes are needed to get about a full can of crushed tomatoes, typically speaking, I would say it's about 8 to 10. So it's a lot of tomatoes. And the reason for this, of course, is because we're making a lot of soup today. This recipe is probably going to be able to feed, I would say, about 8 people. Or, and this is what I usually do because I have a small family, I typically have a little bit of the soup and then afterwards we put it in the fridge and we have a lot of soup to last us the rest of the week. So this is a really good recipe to make if you're trying to meal prep for the rest of the week and you want to make sure that you have something nice and balanced. So this is where the crushed tomatoes comes in. And then our last few ingredients is just 1.5 cups of water. I'm going to be using water in a lot of our recipes that we work with here on the Deen Support Services food program. And that's because, of course, water is life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ. Everything is made with water. And that's really for a really important reason. We need water for all of our major functions in our body. We need it for digestion. We need it for the ability for our brain to function properly. There are so many things that our body really works very well at and is able to do properly because of water. So I'm going to be using about 1.5 cups today, and I encourage you guys to stay hydrated during the day as well so that you're not feeling icky, you're not feeling tired, and you're also able to get things done and function during the day. Our last ingredient at the very end is our chickpeas. So I'm working with about a can of chickpeas today. That translates to about 2 cups of chickpeas. And the reason for that is because so far we've talked about vegetables, we've talked about something really small that has protein, but we haven't introduced an ingredient that gives a big punch of protein, and that's where the chickpeas comes in. So chickpeas, of course, is a good source of fiber, and it's also a type of pulse, which is like a bean, a chickpea, or a lentil, that also gives you carbohydrates and starch, but it also gives you protein, which is really important in trying to have a balanced diet. Usually in our cultures, we're very used to having things like beef and lamb as our source of protein during the day, but when you're trying to be a little bit more heart healthy, I encourage you to use, like I was saying earlier, more things like fish, more things like chicken, and things like pulses. Chickpeas, lentils, and beans are an amazing source of protein that are going to help promote good heart health. So now that we have all of our ingredients, it's time for us to get started. Let's take a look at our Instant Pot for today. So this Instant Pot is a really good tool to use, I should say, for a lot of different recipes, primarily for things like soup. So I'm sure you've made soup before. Try to think about the differences in how soup could be made with something that could cook it really fast versus making it on a stovetop where it would take about an hour or so for all of your flavors to integrate. The wonderful thing about an Instant Pot is that it's going to take about 10 to 15 minutes max once you put the lid on and you put it on pressure cook. There's also even a soup option that's going to help us later on to ensure that that's done really properly. So I'm using my Instant Pot today, and I'm going to turn it on first to Sauté. Sauté is the bottom left button on your computer screen. So I'm going to show you again. If you go to the top left of the computer screen at the front of the Instant Pot, you're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttons. It's the last button. It's the 6th button at the bottom. So I'm going to click that now. It says Sauté, and it's already set a time of about 30 minutes. That means that's the maximum amount of time you can saute your items. That doesn't mean that it's going to stay on for 30 minutes, whether we like it or not. So luckily it's already turned on, and we can turn it off whenever we like using the cancel button, which I'll show you in more detail later. Now that it's turning on, it's time for us to prep our vegetables, and we're going to start off a little bit with the flavors, and you can't do that without having a little bit of oil. So oil is super important. Usually when you're making a soup, you might not think about using oil, but it's super important to bring out the flavors of the onion, of the spices, and it's also really helpful with cooking your vegetables too. So I'm just going to add about a tablespoon, there you go, of our oil. And you might think that's a little bit of oil and not enough, but actually that's pretty much the way that oils and fats work. Whenever you put them on a stovetop and you add the heat, they spread out, and it really is able to coat the pan even though it's a very small amount. So over the course of this recipe, we're gonna have other liquids that will allow for things to not stick to the bottom of the pan, so you don't have to worry about that. And we'll be able to saute everything safely and not have anything burn. Wait until this brings your olive oil, or sorry, your canola oil to a really good heat, and then we're going to be able to start off with cooking our onions. Okay, so it's now time for us to add the onion because our oil is all nice and hot. So I'm gonna very slowly pour my onion into the Instant Pot. I love that sound. It means everything has started to combine. It's starting to cook. And that means we also have the right temperature as well. Let's move it around the pan. And what we're trying to achieve here is a caramelized onion. Of course, that usually happens after you've kind of moved everything around the pot for about 20 minutes or so. Caramelizing onions can take time, but I do want to see the color change. And the reason for that is because onion has a natural sugar inside that, in the same way when you're trying to make caramel from sugar, you see it go from a white to a clear and then to a brown, and then you also develop that sweet taste. In that same way, you can kind of see that happen in onions. That's why people love caramelized onions. So I'm just going to move it around my pot, and I'm also going to make sure that I don't have any onions stuck to the sides of the pot. That's a really dangerous thing because it ends up having some burnt pieces of onion in your soup, and you don't want that. So I'm just going to keep moving it around, and I'm also going to make sure that it's not sticking to the bottom of the pan. This is probably the most labor-intensive part of the recipe. It's going to be the part of the recipe that needs the most work because you're going to keep moving the onions around. So do this for about 5 minutes or so, and then afterwards we're going to come back and add some more of our ingredients. Awesome, so our onions have slowly started to change color, which is really nice. And we're now going to move on to a few of our other ingredients. In particular, I'm going to move on to things that have a little bit of moisture because I just don't want things to be burning at the bottom of the pan. I'm going to add in my spoons of garlic paste. Perfect. I'm just going to move that around as well. And I'm also going to throw in my spices. I encourage you to be creative and add in whatever spices you like, but to also try to discover other spices too. Just gonna move that around. And now I'm gonna add in the parts of this recipe that I know are probably gonna take a little bit of time to cook. So the first thing I'm thinking of right away are the carrots. Carrots take a really long time to cook. I find that because of their hard nature, they really need to stay in there for a long time. So I'm gonna throw those in there as well. Awesome. And as Muslims, we try not to waste food, so I'm just going to try to remove as much of the carrot as possible. Very good. And if you notice that the spice is kind of sticking to the bottom of the pan, don't be afraid to use the container that you just had to get a little bit of water and throw it in. I think I want to do that. The last thing we want is a burnt pan. Nobody likes a burnt pan, especially afterwards when you're trying to clean everything. Makes things really difficult. So just get in there with your spoon or your spatula or whatever else that you're using and make sure that nothing is stuck to the bottom. Awesome. Alhamdulillah. So we've done that. Now it's time for us to add in the rest of our lovely vegetables. I have my bell pepper. I'm going to throw that in there. Oh, and the colors already look so nice. We have the red of the bell peppers and the yellow too. Then we also have the orange of our carrots. We just mix that together like this. And we can't forget the green of our celery. Perfect. Awesome. I'm just going to move that around here like that. And you're already starting to see that it looks really like a rainbow. We have so many colors in here that make everything look so much more enticing. And it reminds you that so much of food is what you see. So it's really good to try to make food that entices you to eat, especially when it's healthy like this. That's what you really want. You want to be enticed to eat so that you can have a much healthier and balanced diet. In addition, I'm just going to make sure that everything cooks together very well. And I'm going to let everything combine and sit for a few minutes or so before moving on to our next step. All right, so we have allowed for everything to combine, and the saute function has done all that it needs to do. We can turn it off now. And the way in order to do that is to run your fingers along the bottom of the computer screen at the front of your Instant Pot. Look for the third button from the left. So we're just gonna go here, bottom left of your Instant Pot computer screen, sorry. We're gonna go 1 to the left, or 1 to the right, sorry, and 2 to the right. So it's the third button from the right on the bottom. You can cancel that. And the reason we're canceling that is because I'm very happy with the way that our vegetables are looking. I can slowly start to notice that the carrots are not as hard as they used to be at the beginning, which is very good. And now we're going to allow for the liquid that is emitting from our crushed tomatoes and the liquid that we're gonna have from our water and our vegetable broth to do the rest. So let's go ahead and add those in. I'm gonna start off with the crushed tomato. I'm just gonna pour that in here like that. Awesome, very good. And again, as Muslims, we try not to waste food, so don't be afraid to get in there and get as much of it out. And if you can't get everything out, don't worry. We do have water to help with that. So our 1.5 cups of water, one of my tricks is I always love to use water to get rid of as many of the things sticking to the side of bowls as possible. Let me just do that. There you go. Just gonna throw that in too. Perfect. I think we've done as much as we could. Put that there. And then we're also going to add in our vegetable broth. So I'm gonna be adding in about 3 cups in there. And the good thing about using an Instant Pot is that it has a fill line. So I know exactly when I have hit 3 cups. Perfect. And we're going to just use the spoon or the spatula to mix everything together. The pressure cooker does a very good job of that. The Instant Pot will allow for there to be a lot of pressure and heat, and eventually things will combine. But I just want to help it along a little bit here because this is supposed to be a quick recipe. We want this to be done very quickly. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to add in the quinoa. So quinoa is really different from couscous. Couscous is able to cook, I would say, relatively simply. All you have to do is throw some water in there and then it soaks it up and it's done. But because quinoa has all of that lovely fiber, it has all of that protein, whereas couscous doesn't, it needs to take a little bit more time. So it's really good that we're using a pressure cooker like this Instant Pot, and it's good that we're using a lot of liquid. So let me just pour that in there. And I've made this recipe before, and I've had, some family members tell me that they wish there was more quinoa in there. So if that's something that you're interested in, I recommend that you do that. Add some more quinoa, even add some chicken if you like, add some fish. Try to make this your own and sort of really just be creative and customize it based on your own tastes and your own nutritional needs. Okay, so I think I've added in everything that I need to. It's time for me to close the Instant Pot. So let me just show you guys again how that works. We have our lid over here, and the lid has 2 arms. It has a left arm and a right arm. Make sure that you have your hands there just to keep it in mind that we need to be keeping it like this. And then we also have the top of the Instant Pot lid, which kind of bumps out. If you're holding it upside down, that's okay. Just turn it around to make sure that the bumpy part is at the top. And then we're going to look for the handle. So the handle is also at the front of the lid, and it's going to allow for you to hold it properly and sort of position it really well on top of the Instant Pot. The bottom of the pot also has a left arm and a right arm, and the goal is to line everything up. So we're gonna line the left arm and the right arm, and we're also going to line up a part at the very top of the lid that bumps out, because there's also that on the pot. So I'm gonna place it like this. And the good thing about the Instant Pot is that it sort of gives you cues and signs when you have put things correctly. It gives you that little do-do-do-do-do music. So I know that I have everything on right, and now I'm just going to turn it, I would say, clockwise. So turn the lid clockwise like this, and it tells you that it's locked in because it gives a different chime. I'm gonna show you one more time. So that's what it looks like, and that's what it sounds like when you've got it in, but it's not fully locked. Then we're going to turn it over clockwise. and it's fully locked. If you're struggling with this, I encourage you to try to find some YouTube videos or ask a friend who has used an Instant Pot before, and they're going to be able to help you to align everything properly. It can be a little bit difficult at first. Now we're going to put our Instant Pot on soup mode, because luckily there's a button for that too. So we're going to look over here at Instant Pot, and the soup mode is the first one at the top left. So reach for the computer at the very front, the computer screen at the very front of the Instant Pot. Look for the top left, and we're going to press soup. And we're hoping to cook this for about 5 minutes. So you have a few options here. If you want to kind of leave the Instant Pot when it's on its 30-minute setting and then just come back after 5 minutes, you can do that, and you can have it just go beep, 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 and it'll start it on its own, or you can make some adjustments. I'm sure if you were to hit cancel like this and hit the soup option, it gives you some ideas of how you'd like to do it. You can choose to increase the time or decrease the time to 5 minutes like I can right now. And then it's going to be able to beep at you and tell you when everything is ready. Great. So we're going to wait for about 5 minutes or so. It's going to beep again to let me know that everything is done and ready and setting. And we're going to come back and see how our soup looks. I can't wait. Okay, alhamdulillah, we've allowed for this to sit for about 5 minutes or so and pressure cook on the soup mode. I've already released all of the steam and the pressure from the top little portion on the lid that allows for everything to be released. I'm now going to very carefully remove the lid, and I can see that our soup has finished cooking. There are always a few indicators that you can use to figure out at home if your soup is ready and cooked as well. So I'm just going to stir it a little bit like this to ensure that we have the fluid moving all around the soup. And I can take a look at the quinoa, and I've noticed that it's no longer bright white. The color has actually changed and it's puffed up, which is really good. Whenever quinoa puffs up like this and it's soaked up all the flavor and the liquid and all of that nice taste, it means that it's cooked, alhamdulillah. So I'm just going to mix it a little bit more like that, because we have one final secret ingredient. I'm sure you've been wondering what happened with this ingredient. It's the chickpeas. I'm just going to throw in the chickpeas here for some added protein and some added fiber. And I am using cooked chickpeas or canned chickpeas. I find that it's a lot easier. You're probably thinking, Huda, I don't use canned chickpeas, and I've heard that canned things are not good for you. Well, actually, the thing in canned goods that isn't good for you is the liquid that's used to preserve these items. So it's usually the salt water. And alhamdulillah, the really good thing about having a colander at home or something like a sifter is that you can get rid of all of that liquid, and you can also rinse all of the salt off. So once you've done that, you've saved yourself about 24 hours. You don't have to allow for your chickpeas to soak overnight, and you can simply add them into your recipe like this and serve it to your family and friends, because we're all done. I'm going to make a nice little bowl for myself. I hope you guys do the same, and don't be afraid to send in a picture of your Desi Quinoa soup to the Deen Support Services website. We would love to be able to see what you've been able to do yourself at home, and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.